Welcome to Unicrack. In today's video, we'll be looking at the determination of range of the following function we have here. Now the question says, determine the range of the following. We have the first question, second question, third question, and the fourth question. By the end of this video, we'll be able to solve questions as pertaining to range of the following kinds of functions. Now, since we have this, we would assume, in a situation maybe you are not given, we would assume that the function is mapping from real numbers to real numbers. If you have watched our previous video on domain of functions, you will see that I already explained the definition of range, definition of domain also, and also your codomain. So if you have not watched the video, you can go back and watch the video. The link is also in the comment section and in the description of this video. Now, in the video I stated that this is our domain and this is our codomain. But let me just give a brief intro as to what range is. So range is what the actual output that a function produces. So the range of a function is the actual output that a function produces. Now, we'll be looking at finding the range of these functions, and before finding them, there are rules I want us to know about finding or determining the range of a function. Now, the rule is this. Rule number one is that you would have to make x subject of the formula. So you would make x the subject of the formula. So let's do something. Finding the range of the first question. Now, the first one is f of x is equal to x squared. To find the range of this function, we would have to make x the subject of the formula. And how do we do that? We would say f of x, instead of f of x, we'll say y. So we'll say y is equal to what? X squared. Now since we have this, we can now say x squared is equal to y. So they are the same thing. Y is equal to x squared is the same thing as me saying what? X squared is also equal to y. So it's the same thing. I just switched them. So having this, to make x now subject of the formula, I'll square root both sides. If I square root both sides, don't forget, let me clean this. If I square root both sides, my y will be here. I would have to introduce my what? Plus minus, because this square will cancel out the square root, and I will have x is equal to plus or minus the square root of y. Now we have made x the subject of the formula, and this is rule number one. Let me write it here, rule number one. So since we have found for rule number one, rule number two says find the domain of the function. Now why I say find the domain, yes, I know we are looking for the range of the function, but if you go to the video about the rules for finding the domain of function, you will see that I've already given out the rules for finding out the domain of a function. So finding the domain of the function simply means the knowledge you have about domain, you will use it here to find your range. In this case, we are finding for y. That's why we say the range are the actual outputs, in brackets we say the y values that a function produces. Now, since we have this, finding the range, we know that this is a radical function. And since it is a radical function, the rule for radical function is that it cannot be what? The rule for radical function, means that here must be greater than or equal to 0. What do we mean by that? If you have your calculator, you can look for the square roots of any value that is greater than or equal to 0. It will give you an output. So if you find the square root of 1, square root of 0, square root of 2, 3, 1.2, 1.5, and the rest, those numbers that are greater than 0, even 0 point something, 0.2, you can find the square root to give you an output. But if you find the value of any number that is less than 0, for example, -1, -2, -0.2, all those numbers will return invalid. That means in your calculator you see it as what? Math error. And that's why for a radical function, the condition is it must be greater than or equal to 0. That's what we said in our domain. The rule number one for domain was find the condition. So the condition here now is what? Greater than or equal to 0. And the rule number two for domain, I'm still going back over it again. The rule number two for domain was that what? Would equate the equation to the condition and solve for x, but in this case we'll solve for y. So equating the equation to the condition would have y. So rule number two, which is just find the domain, So rule number 2 is equate the equation, not the square root. The square root is not part of the equation. It is y. So y is greater than or equal to what? 0. Now solving for y we have already gotten the value of y. So we'll go to rule number 3 in our domain rules, which is what? Go to your number line. So if we go to our number line, we have that this is this. We have here to be negative infinity. We have here to be what? Infinity. We have here to be 0. And now, what we solve for y is what? Greater than or equal to what? 0. So y must be greater than or equals to, since it's equals to, I will shade here and we'll go towards this side. Now let's try something. If we come here, here will be negative. Let's say we have negative 2 here. If you find the square root of negative 2, comes out undefined or invalid. So in this case, the range which we write as ran of f will be equal to, now this is the inclusive. So inclusive 0, infinity. And infinity is always non-inclusive. If you don't know about inclusive and non-inclusive, you can also go back to the video and you'll see the explanation on it. So inclusive, so numbers between 0 to infinity with 0 inclusive. This is the range of this function. Very easy. Let's go to the next one. The next one says we should find the range of this function. Now this is a quadratic equation. As it's a quadratic equation, it's a quadratic function now in this case. Now since it's a quadratic function, we are going to find the range of this. Finding the range of this is a little bit more tricky and a little bit complex than these ones you would come across. Why is that? Because for this quadratic equation, for us to make x subject of the formula, we would have to do a different approach. How? Now for question number 2, we'll say y is equal to 2x squared minus x plus 1. Now since we have this, we would carry y to the other side. Why are we doing that? Because we want to make sure we use the quadratic formula to solve for x. Now we have 2x squared minus x plus 1 minus y all equal to 0. Since we have made y to come to the other side, it becomes 0 automatically. Now since we have this, we can use the quadratic formula to solve for x. Now to do that, what we'll do is we'll say a is equal to 2, b is equal to negative 1, and c, which is your constant, will be what? 1 minus y. Not only 1, but also y inclusive now in this case. Now we have our quadratic formula, if you have forgotten, it is minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. This is our quadratic formula. And since we have this, we will now begin to solve. Now beginning to solve, our b is what? Negative 1. This is our b here. So negative 1. The coefficient here is 1. So we'll have minus bracket minus 1. Because this minus is from here. And b is what? Minus 1. Plus or minus the square roots of b squared, which is minus 1 squared, minus 4a is what? 2. And c is what? 1 minus y. All over 2a, which is 2 bracket 2. So we have replaced each and every one of the letters with their what? Representatives. Now since we have this, minus times minus 1, negative times negative is what? Positive. So we would have 1 plus or minus the square root of minus 1 squared is what? Positive 1. 1 minus 4 times, negative 4 times 2 is what? Negative 8. So we have negative 8 bracket 1 minus y all into 2 times 2, which is what? 4. Now since we have this, what we'll do next is this. We'll say 1 plus or minus the square root of, don't forget your board mass, you would multiply before what? Subtracting. So don't go and say 1 minus 8. You would multiply through first. 8 times, negative 8 times 1 will be what? So we'll have 1 minus negative 8 times 1 will be negative 8. Negative 8 times negative y will be what? Positive 8y divided by what? 4. Now you can subtract. 1 minus 8 will be what? Negative 7. So we'll have 1 plus or minus the square root of 7, negative 7, plus 8y divided by 4. Now we can rearrange this. We would have 1 plus or minus the square root of 8y minus 7 divided by 4. So we just brought the negative, we just rearranged it. So Any number that's like this, we assume it has a positive. So that's why we left it like this. Now, since we have this, we have solved for x. So x, automatically, we can now say is equal to 1 plus or minus the square root of 8y minus 7 divided by 4. Now we have found x. Now, since we have found x, we can now find the range of the function. Now, finding the range of this function, allow me to clean here. Now, finding the range of this function, you would see that from this place, our concern is not on this 1 plus or minus and 4. Our concern is only here. And you'll see that we have a radical function. Now, since we have a radical function and it is in the numerator, since it is in the numerator, we would say that the condition for a radical function in this manner would be what? Greater than or equal to what? 0. So we have found for x, which is our rule number 1. We have completed our rule number 1. Rule number 2 says we should find the domain. That means use the rules from the domain video or use the rules for finding domains. So if you know how to find your domain, what you do next is, sorry, this is not rule number 2, rule number 1, which is make x subject of the formula. So we go to rule number 2. So for your rule number 2, what you would see is find the domain of the function. And the condition is what? Greater than equal to 0. Now, it says we should equate the equation to the condition. Equating it, we have 8y minus 7 is greater than equal to 0. Now, we'll make y now subject of the formula. For carry y to the other side, we have 8y. 8y is greater than or equal to what? Positive 7. Divide both sides by 8. Cancel this, we have y is greater than or equal to what? 7 over 8. And this is the value of y. Now, after this, for your domain, don't forget, we would have to go to our what? Number line. Now, going to our number line, we have this, we have this. We have 0 here, negative infinity, and we have, sorry, not negative infinity, infinity and negative infinity. So our 7 over 8 would obviously be here. So we have 7 over 8. And they say y is what? Greater than or equal to 7 over 8. So that means greater than equal to, so 7 over 8. And therefore you can try it out. What number can we pick up here? Let's try 0. If we try 0 here, 8 times 0 is what? 0. 0 minus 7 is what? Negative 7. Square root of negative 7 will come out undefined. Therefore it is true that numbers that are less than 7 over 8 will not work. If you also want to try other numbers here, find the values of 7 divided by 8, then look for numbers here and you will always know that it will not work for the function. So, therefore, the range, which you can also write as R of f, is equal to what? They say greater than or equal to, so 7 over 8 inclusive, comma what? Infinity, not inclusive. And therefore, this is the range of the function. Now, we move to the third question. To the third question, we have that we should find the range of this, which is equal to square root of 4x squared minus 1. Now, finding the range of this, we go back to our rule. Rule number 1 says we should make x subject of the formula. Now, we'll say y is equal to square root of 4x squared minus 1. To make x subject of the formula, we can say square root of 4x squared minus 1 is equal to y. We can square both sides. To square both sides, this square will cancel out the square root. We have 4x squared minus 1 is equal to what? Y squared. Now we carry y to the other side. 1, to the other side. And we'll have 4x squared is equal to what? Y squared plus 1. Now since we have this, we can divide both sides by what? 4. Now since we divide both sides by 4, this 4 will cancel out. And we have x squared equal to what? Y squared plus 1 divided by 4. The next thing we'll do is we square root both sides. Now square rooting both sides, we have this. We also have this. Plus, minus. Don't forget, bring your equal to sign here. So let me bring this down. Square root of x squared, we have equal to. So this square will cancel out this. And we have x is equal to what? Plus or minus. We can do this based on the law of sorts. I can say if I have square root of 1 over 4, it is same thing as square root of 1 over square root of 4. And therefore, I can do this to be square root of y squared plus 1 divided by square root of 4. Notwithstanding, this plus or minus is for both the numerator and denominator, so we can just leave it there. It doesn't matter. Now, what we'll do next is, you will notice that square root of 4 is what? 2. And therefore, x will be equal to plus or minus the square root of y squared plus 1 divided by what? 2. Now, since we have this, what you will see that we can do next is this, is that for this, we have fulfilled rule number 1. Now, since we have done for rule number 1 has been completed, we have made x subject of the formula. Now, since we have made x subject of the formula, rule number 2 says we should do what? Find the domain. Now, finding the domain, we would see that we just have to find a condition for this. This is where y is. So, finding the condition for this, the condition is, since it's a radical function, greater than or equal to what? 0. Now, we would have y squared plus 1, so equating it to it equal to what? 0. We carry 1 to the other side, we have y squared plus, not plus, greater than or equal to what? Negative 1. Square rooting both sides would have plus or minus. This will cancel this. Square root, let me do this again. So this will be plus or minus the square root of negative 1. So square root of negative 1 will be invalid or undefined, and this is where we stop. You will see that we cannot proceed further. And since we cannot proceed further, if you come across a situation like this, what you do is refer back to your condition, and your condition is the range of the function. How? The condition says it must be what? Greater than or what? Equal to what? 0. That means for every input we put here, the values will always come out to be what? Greater than or equal to what? 0. Another way of looking at it is from this place. Since we have made x subject of the formula, this is our new equation. Since this is our new equation, every value that must come outside of this radical function here must be greater than or equal to 0 for the function to remain valid. So here must be what? Greater than or equal to what? 0. And therefore, we can come to our number line. This is 0, this is infinity, this is negative infinity, greater than or equal to what? 0. And therefore, the range of the function, which is r of f, is equal to what? 0 inclusive, comma what? Infinity. And therefore, this is the range of the function. Now, to our last question, the fourth question says that f of x is equal to 1 all over the positive square root of 4 minus x squared. Since we have this, go back to our rule again, which is what? Make x subject of the formula. And since here is a positive, we don't need to follow up with the sign anymore. So we just have y equal to. Now you would also notice it's an intentional act that this question comes out being positive. If not, if it were to be a positive minus, we would have to find the range, solve for the positive aspect, and in as much as that, the sign will not even be an issue, because it will not be necessary now for this case. That's what it is. So let's go. We have this. We have 1 all over what? Positive square root of 4 minus x squared. Since we have this, to make x subject of the formula, we have 1 all over the positive square root of what? 4 minus x squared equal to what? Y. Now what we do, we square both sides. Since we square both sides, we have this. We have this also. Coming down here, this square is saying 1 squared, which is what? 1. Divided by the square of the square root of 4 minus x squared. That means we have this all squared, and therefore this will cancel out this. And therefore we have 4 minus x squared is equal to what? Y squared. Since we have this, we can cross multiply. To cross multiply, this is over 1. We would have y squared bracket 4 minus x squared is equal to what? 1. Divide both sides by y squared. Divide both sides by y squared. This y squared will cancel out this. And we have 4 minus x squared is equal to 1 over y squared. We can carry 4 to the other side, and we will have negative x squared is equal to 1 all over y squared minus 4. Now we will not end here. Since we have a negative here, let us balance this place in order to remove the negative or to eliminate the negative. To balance here, we have negative x squared equal to 1 all over y squared minus 4. So to make this, we'll make y squared the LCM in this case. Y squared divided by y squared is 1. 1 times 1 is what? 1. Minus, this is 4 over 1. Y squared divided by 1 is y squared. 4, y squared times negative 4. Obviously, I'm putting the negative, so it's negative 4y squared equal to what? Negative x squared. Now we'll multiply through by a negative. Multiplying through by a negative would have negative times negative x squared would have x squared equal to negative bracket 1 minus what? 4y squared divided by what? Y squared. The negative is for both the numerator and denominator, by the way. So we'd have x squared is equal to negative times 1 will be what? Negative 1. Negative times negative 4y squared will be what? Positive 4y squared divided by what? Y squared. We can arrange this and have x squared is equal to 4y squared minus 1 divided by what? Y squared. When we square root both sides, this square will cancel out this. We'll have this, and this will be plus or minus. Finally, we'll have that what? X is equal to plus or minus the square root of 4y squared minus 1. So let's come to this side. We'll have x is equal to positive minus square root of what? 4y squared minus 1 divided by square root of y squared. I already explained this earlier from the concept we did here. So this square will cancel out this, and we have x is equal to plus or minus the square root of 4y squared minus 1 divided by y. Now since we have this, we have fulfilled rule number 1, which is making x subject of the formula. Now since we have done this, we would have to find the range. Now in this case, we have a radical function and we also have a rational function. Radical roots, rational fractions. So since this is in the denominator, we would have to find the range of this. In this case, going to rule number 2, which is find the domain. But we all understand it now. So this is finding this, the range of this, finding the range of this. So to do this, to find the range of the numerator, we know the condition to be what? So rule number 2 now. We know the condition to be what? Greater than equal to what? 0. We have 4y squared minus 1 is greater than equal to 0. 4y squared is greater than equal to, if 1 crosses over, it becomes positive 1. If we divide both sides by 4, have this, we'd have y squared is greater than equal to what? 1 over 4. Once we square root both sides, we'd have plus or minus. This will cancel out this, and we have y to be greater than equal to what? Plus or minus. I'd already explained this earlier, so here will be what? 1 over 2. How is it 1 over 2? I'll repeat myself again. This is square root of 1 over square root of 4. Square root of 1 is what? 1. Square root of 4 is what? 2. So therefore, now, if you were in the last class, or if you watch the last video, in this case, if you watch the last video, you would see the explanation when it comes to inequalities, and you have 2 values. Now, for this case, we always say that the positive would go with the inequality you solved for. Now, that means y would be greater than or equal to what? Positive 1 over 2. Or y would be what? Now, the opposite would be what? Less than or equal to what? Negative 1 over 2. Now, we have found the range of the numerator. To find the range of the denominator, what you will do is this. So, for the denominator now, for a rational function, that means functions that are expressed in fractions. So for a rational function, for the denominator, the condition is what? Cannot be equal to 0. You see that any number divided by 0 will become undefined. So for this, the condition is what? Not equal to 0. And therefore, we'll say equate the equation to the condition. We have y not equal to 0. Now, since we have this, we have solved for this and we have solved for this. What is the range of this? The range of this would be, for the numerator now, would be r of f, so that we'll determine the overall range of the equation. So coming to this, we'll go to our number line. We have negative infinity, positive infinity, 0. Negative 1 over 2 will be here, positive 1 over 2 will be here. So these are positive 1 over 2. Now they say y is greater than or equal to what? Positive 1 over 2. So that means greater than or equal to this. And they say y is less than equal to what? Negative 1 over 2. Less than. So we are going backwards to this. Now, and they say y for this is what? Y cannot be equal to 0. Now you see there's no any clashing between them. So it's very obvious that this is also avoiding 0. The numerator is also avoiding 0. The denominator is also avoiding 0. And therefore the range of this function would be what we have here. And therefore the range of this function r of f would be from negative infinity to negative 1 over 2. So negative infinity comma what? Negative 1 over 2 inclusive union of what? 1 over 2 comma what? Infinity. But this is not the range. We have already solved it, but this is not the range. How is that possible? For every value that would come outside of this place, would not come outside with a negative. Because it is a radical function, this value here would not come outside. You will see that for every radical function we solve to, we always move towards the positive side. And therefore, the range of this function would only be from 1 over 2 to what? Infinity. Because it is a radical function, this function will not bring out a value that will be what? Negative. And therefore, the range of this function now would be r of f would only be from positive 1 over 2 comma what? Infinity. Because every value that comes out of this place must always come out what? Positive. And therefore, the range of the function is what? From 1 over 2 inclusive to what? Infinity. And this is where we'll be coming to an end of this video. See you in the next video.